To give some context, in 2021 I got my first job as an order picker in a food processing company. Being a very unsocial person, I managed to negotiate with my boss to work with the small night shift, which was 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. It's quite ridiculous because there's nothing good about being an order picker when you compare it with other jobs, but for me it was heaven, and I could work on my own without having to interact with other people. One evening, my father dropped me off in front of the company at 9 p.m. and left. He couldn't take me any later because he was too tired to drive any later that night. So I sat down on the ground next to the building and started lighting up a cigarette and hanging out on my phone. A few minutes later, a man emerges from the darkness, well-dressed and well-groomed and carrying a rucksack. He walks over to sit on the ground next to me. At the time, he looked like an ordinary employee, so I thought he must have forgotten a file and come back to get it. But the strange thing was that the building was still open, so the man could have just gone straight in to get his papers. When I remembered, I was really scared and wondered what this man wanted and why he was sitting so close to me. Being paranoid by nature, I imagined all sorts of creepy things he could do to attack me, but fortunately he didn't do anything. He just sat there and didn't move an inch, as if he'd become a statue. After several minutes of silence, during which I stressed and he did literally nothing, it was 9:50 p.m. So I entered the building and the man did the same. I was even more worried, but then I remembered that the building had security cameras, and that reassured me. After all, why would he attack me in the building which is secured by cameras when, outside, there were none? I made my way to the changing rooms to change into my prep outfit, and saw that he had taken a different one that led to the offices. This reassured me a little, as it confirmed my theory that he was just an employee. Throughout my evening at work, I thought about this man and couldn't stop wondering why he had waited on the floor with me. One of the most likely scenarios I thought of was that he probably thought the door was closed and that I was waiting to be let in, and that by instinct, he just sat down and waited with me without saying anything. For most of my shift, I was alone in my area and continued to work, except that at one point, I heard a man coughing and when I turned around, I saw him. The man stood there, straight as an eye, staring at me. When I noticed he was staring at me, I jumped up and asked, "Can I help you?" But the man said nothing and continued to stare at me blankly. After about 2 minutes, which seemed like hours, he walked towards me. My instincts were screaming at me to run away from this man, but I couldn't. I was stunned. And when he was less than 2 meters away, he put his hand in his pocket. I thought he was going to pull out a knife or something and stab me, but instead he pulled out a pack of cigarettes, still intact, handed them to me, and walked out. It was the same brand as the one I had been smoking, but it didn't belong to me, for the simple reason that I buy my cigarette packs individually, and once this one is empty, I go and buy another. But I never buy several packs at the same time. What's more, he could have never known what brand it was, since I didn't take my pack out in front of him. After that, I never saw him again. I moved to another area that evening to talk to other colleagues, but they were dubious about my story. I also tried to tell my superiors, but they didn't believe me either, because you need an access card to enter the building, and according to them, if this stranger was able to get in, he probably had one. The problem was that I was the one who opened the door, and the man simply walked through it before it closed. Nevertheless, I continued to work there until the end of my contract, but I still don't know who this man is or what he wanted from me. Why did he sit so still next to me that night? Why did he follow me into an employee area? Why did he watch me for so long without saying a word? And why did he give me that unopened pack of cigarettes? For a bit of context, I work at a gas station in the backwoods of Tennessee, and that's where this happened. Last night when I clocked in at 8 p.m., the store was completely dead. I figured it was going to be a pretty easy night, because the road the station is on is not the main road. Actually, it used to be up until about a decade ago when a new freeway was built. This led basically every business that was here to pack up and leave their old building abandoned. Thanks to this, there are a lot of abandoned buildings on this stretch of road that local druggies tend to claim as their own. Anyways, at around 11 p.m., I only had about an hour left of my shift, so I figured I'd actually get some work done, instead of just sitting around and doing nothing. I'm 18, so I work the shift alone, which is nice, because it means I can do pretty much whatever I want. This is normally pretty great, because I can do whatever I want, so long as I can get everything finished. I noticed we were almost out of barbecue chips, so I need to go get them from our storage space, which is for some reason in the basement of the station. I've always hated going down there, just because it gives me the creeps. Why the owner decided to put everything in there is just beyond my comprehension. I got about halfway down the steps before something fell on the other side of the room and it sounded like footsteps were coming my way. I sprinted up the stairs and locked the door to the basement, panicking like a madman the entire time. When I got back upstairs, I went behind the counter to the store computer so I could check the security cameras. I flicked over to the one that looks into the basement, and there was this guy just standing there, smiling up into the camera. He had a look of absolute insanity in his eyes, but he didn't look like the average junkie in the area. He was clean shaven and dressed in what looked to be jeans and a button-up of some kind. Honestly, if he had walked into the store, I wouldn't have batted an eye, but because he was down there and because he was just looking into the camera smiling, it shook me to my core. I called the store owner, and at first he was pretty mad that I called him in the middle of the night, but once he heard how freaked out I was, his tone changed. He told me he'd be there in 15 minutes, and just to lock the main door to the store and make sure the man didn't go anywhere. I asked if I should call the cops, but for some reason he didn't want me to do that just yet. I locked the entrance to the gas station and went back to looking at the man. He was still there just smiling up at me. About 3 or so minutes of him staring at me later, and he walked out of the view of the camera. My boss showed up soon after armed with the shotgun, and when I let him in he immediately went to the basement. I went with him just because I felt safe with there being another person there, and all, but we found nothing. My boss ultimately chalked this up to me being tired and hallucinating the man, but I know what I saw. This has me scared shitless as I have to clock back into work in a few hours and I'm really dreading it. I work a graveyard shift as a security guard for a recycling yard. I can't say the company for obvious reasons. I've been on the site for about 2 weeks now, this being the second. Basically every hour I make rounds across a giant recycling yard, covered in various precious metals that are broken down and then sold. During my shift I scan various checkpoints and ensure that nobody beside me is in the yard of the facility. One of my other tasks is to go through some grassy, bushy terrain and over a set of train tracks to take a photo of a warehouse that's far across. This is to ensure that it is safe and clear. I have to use a flashlight with 2000 lumens so that I can see my way through pretty much the entire yard. Well, just an hour and a half ago on my round, I went through the grass and over the train tracks. I took the picture of the warehouse and I submitted it. All of a sudden I got this intense feeling that I'm being watched. The hairs on the back of my neck stand up and I freeze. My flashlight is still on and pointing at the warehouse. I slowly turn around and point my flashlight behind me. I kid you not. About 10 yards away, I see a skinny, old, wrinkled white man with a large white beard sitting on a chair. He was looking directly at me. He had dirty jean overalls and what I think was a Western-style cowboy fedora on. He was bare skin under the overalls. Now I'm a 6 foot, 220 pound man, but I screamed the F-bomb at a pitch that was just embarrassing. I accidentally dropped my flashlight out of shock. Mind you, there are thin, tiny metal shards literally everywhere on the ground. I can't see a damn thing now as the flashlight is facing away from my sight. All I hear is quick paced shuffling, clanging of metal from footsteps quickly running towards me. Once the metal crunching footsteps are within maybe 5 feet of me, I hear them quickly veer to the left and past me. Within 3 to 4 seconds, the metal clanging is gone, followed by the faraway sound of rustling bushes. I then grabbed my flashlight from the ground and pointed to the sound. The old man was gone. Past the bushes to who knows where. I was shaking from adrenaline and fear. I managed to catch my breath and I called several emergency contacts. When they arrived, the old man was long gone. I believe maybe he was just there to watch the active trains move across. I say this because the metal chair was facing the tracks. It's still there. I took a photo of it. More as a memento, if anything. This group doesn't allow photos, otherwise I would have shared. I am now in the office, still terrified and alone. I have to finish my shift tonight though, and tomorrow I'll do another 11-hour graveyard. I won't quit as I need the money. I just wanted to get this off my chest.